Good morning. Today we will study intracranial hemorrhage. Before coming to intracranial hemorrhage, we will quickly revise the previous lecture. In previous lecture, we have studied the definition of birth injuries. As you know, birth injuries are injuries or defect which occur before, during, and immediately after birthing. There are two categories: birth asphyxia and mechanical injuries. In last lecture we have studied mechanical injuries. Mechanical injuries are of different types, like head and neck injuries, facial injuries, fractures, soft tissue injuries. We have studied the head and neck injuries. Under this heading we have studied cranial, extracranial, cranial and intracranial injuries. In extracranial injuries we have studied caput, cephalohematoma and subgaleal hemorrhage. In cranial injuries we have studied the fractures of skull, and today we will study the intracranial injuries. Intracranial hemorrhage comes under intracranial injuries. Before studying intracranial hemorrhage, we will study the extracranial tissue, cranial and intracranial tissue. Extracranial tissue includes scalp. Scalp, as you know, S stands for skin, C for connective tissue, A for aponeurosis, L for loose areolar tissue, and P for periosteum. Starting from skin to periosteum, it is scalp. It is extracranial tissue, and yesterday we have studied the extracranial hemorrhage, like cephalohematoma, caput and subgaleal hemorrhage. All of these occur in the region of scalp. And we have also studied the skull fracture. This yellow color layer is skull. We have studied linear skull fracture and compressed skull fracture. Today we will study the injury to the tissue inside the cranium. It includes the outermost layer of meninges called dura mater, middle layer called arachnoid mater, and innermost layer called pia mater, and cerebral cortex or brain parenchyma. So epidural, here 3 to 4 types of bleeding may occur. First is epidural hematoma. This epidural hematoma will occur between skull and the outermost layer of meninges called dura mater. So in this picture, the epidural hematoma will occur between this yellow color layer and this purple color layer. And next is subdural hematoma. Subdural hematoma will occur between this lower yellow color layer and white color arachnoid mater. And third is subarachnoid hematoma. Subarachnoid hematoma will occur in this subarachnoid space between arachnoid mater and pia mater. Next is intraventricular hemorrhage or periventricular hemorrhage. This will occur in the area of cerebral cortex. So, definition of intracranial hemorrhage, also called as cerebral bleed. It is a type of intracranial bleed that occurs within the brain tissue or ventricles, means meninges plus brain parenchyma. Types: intracranial hemorrhage are of mainly 2 types. First, which includes meninges, that is subdural, epidural and subarachnoid. Second is which includes brain parenchyma, that is in intraventricular and periventricular. Now we will study subdural, epidural or subarachnoid hemorrhage. It is more common in full term in infants, caused by mechanical head injury in obstructed labor, for example forceps delivery. Neonatal bleeding disorder, that is DIC. DIC stands for disseminated intravascular coagulopathy. It is a blood-related disorder mainly found in as a complication of neonatal sepsis or other bleeding diastasis. Intracranial vascular malformation, there may be malformation in the vessels supplying the brain. These three are responsible for the subdural, epidural or subarachnoid bleed. Symptoms include recurrent seizures, progressive head enlargement with bulging fontanelles, anemia in later neonatal life. There is progressive head enlargement due to accumulation of the blood inside the cranial cavity. So due to this pressure, anterior fontanelle will bulge out, and there will be recurrent seizures, and due to blood loss there will be anemia in later neonatal life. Diagnosis. How we will diagnose it? Confirmation is on the CT and USG. Treatment includes surgical evacuation of hematoma. Next is intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage. It is mostly seen in preterms with birth asphyxia. Here you should note that epidural, subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhage is found in term babies, and this intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage is found in preterm babies with birth asphyxia. Incidence being inversely related to gestational age and birth weight, means as the gestational age increases, the incidence of intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage decreases. It is 60 to 70% in babies with less than 1000 gram and 10 to 20% in babies between 1000 to 1500 grams, and it is rare in newborn greater than 1500 grams or 34 weeks. Intraventricular or ventricular hemorrhage pathogenesis is, it is rarely present in at birth and usually develops during first 3 days of life. Means the symptoms, for example convulsion etc., will appear on day 3 to 4th of life. Clinical manifestation depend on severity of intraventricular hemorrhage or periventricular hemorrhage. Approximately 25% cases are asymptomatic, other may present on 2nd to 3rd day of life. Early sign. What are the early signs? Sluggish or absent Moro reflex. As you know, Moro reflex is a neonatal reflex. In cases of the cerebral bleed, the Moro or reflex will either be sluggish or absent. Sluggish activity and hypotonia. Mother will complain the patient that the baby is lethargic, and progressive pallor or sudden drop in HCT. As there is bleeding, so there will be development of pallor and sudden drop in hematocrit due to blood loss. Recurrent apneic spells, acidosis and shock. And next is feeble or high pitched shrill cry. This shrill cry is a prominent feature related to brain injuries. Seizures, means there will be convulsion, bulging anterior fontanelles and progressive coma. As you know, there will be bulging of anterior fontanelles due to increased intracerebral or intracranial pressure, which can be examined by putting finger on anterior fontanelle, and it will feel like there is bulging in the fontanelle. Coma, progressive coma is due to hypovolemia. There may be hypovolemic shock. Intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage can be diagnosed by USG, CT and MRI to find out the location and the size of hematoma. Treatment. The treatment of intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage, mainly it's supportive. For example, control of seizure. For control of seizures, we used the medicine like phenovavitone or phenytoin, Diazepam is generally contraindicated in neonates. We generally use phenobarbital. Phenobarbital is used in the concentration 20 mg per kg per dose. If convulsion stop, then phenobarbital's loading dose is stopped. If convulsion continue even after the loading dose, then after 20 minutes we give again 10 mg per kg per dose. That is the second dose of phenobarbital. In this way we can use up to 40 mg per kg per day phenobarbital. Same is the case of Eptoin or phenytoin. Phenytoin is better in case of controlling the seizures in neonate than phenobarbital. फेनेटोइन का भी जो प्रो फॉर्म है that is more useful. Shock and management of shock. Management of shock depends upon the cause of the shock. For example, when there is blood loss, we will use the volume expanders. And anemia. Anemia is controlled by blood transfusion or in later life by iron supplementation. Second is reduction of intraventricular pressure by repeated lumbar puncture or ventriculotomy. As we know, there is increase in intracranial pressure due to hemorrhage. So, treatment includes reduction of this pressure by lumbar puncture or ventriculotomy, evacuation of subdural hematoma. Prognosis of this intraventricular or periventricular hemorrhage depends upon the severity and location of the bleed. Apart from early death, the complications include post-hemorrhagic hydrocephalus, and second is motor deficit, for example cerebral palsy, mental retardation and seizures. Thank you.